The 7th Cavalry Regiment is a United States Army cavalry regiment formed in 1866. Its official nickname is Garryowen, after the Irish air Garryowen that was adopted as its march tune. Following its activation, the 7th Cavalry Regiment patrolled the Western Plains for raiding Native Americans and to protect the westward movement of pioneers. From 1866 to 1881, the regiment marched a total of 181,692 miles across Kansas, Montana, and the Dakota Territories. American Indian Wars. The regiment was constituted on the 28th of July 1866 in the regular army as the 7th United States Cavalry. It was organized on the 21st of September 1866 at Fort Riley, Kansas as part of an expansion of the regular army following the demobilization of the wartime volunteer and draft forces. From 1866 through 1871, the regiment was posted to Fort Riley and fought in the American Indian Wars. In the Battle of the Washita in 1868, the regiment sustained 22 losses, while inflicting more than 150 deaths on a Cheyenne encampment, mostly women and children. This attack was led by George Armstrong Custer, who later led the 7th Cavalry to the most calamitous defeat of U.S. forces in the Indian Wars. Typical of post-Civil War cavalry regiments, the 7th Cavalry was organized as a 12-company regiment without a formal battalion organization. Battalions at this time were flexible tactical organizations, with companies being assigned and removed as the field commander desired or felt necessary. Throughout this period, the cavalryman was armed with the Colt single-action Army 45 caliber revolvers and trapdoor Springfield carbines, caliber 45 to 55 until 1892. The regiment used the McClellan saddle, and sabers were also issued but not often carried on campaign. The 7th Cavalry, like the other U.S. Army regiments of the time, had a band, which performed mounted as well as on foot, and seated for concerts. Initially established with the support of Major Alfred Gibbs, the 7th S Band adopted Garryowen as the favorite tune and thus gave the 7th the nickname among the rest of the Army. From 1871 through 1873, 7th Cavalry companies participated in constabulary duties in the Deep South in support of the Reconstruction Act, and behalf the regiment, again in 1874 to 1876. In 1873, the 7th Cavalry moved its garrison post to Fort Abraham Lincoln, Dakota Territory. From here, the regiment carried out Custer's 1874 Black Hills expedition. This led to the discovery of gold in the Black Hills, starting a gold rush in 1874 that precipitated the Great Sioux War of 1876–77. In June 1876, Lieutenant Colonel George A. Custer was killed in the Battle of the Little Bighorn, Montana, along with 267 soldiers of the 7th Cavalry. Although the regiment is well known for the Battle of the Little Bighorn, it also participated in other battles of the American Indian Wars, including the Battle of Bear Paw, Montana on the 30th of September 1877 to 5 October 1877, and the Battle of Crow Agency, Montana on the 5th of November 1887. On the 29th of December 1890, the regiment instigated the Wounded Knee Massacre in South Dakota, an event that signaled the end of the American Indian Wars. Engagements: Washita River, Indian Territory, November 27, 1867. Onsinger Bluff, Montana Territory, August 4, 1873. Yellowstone River, Montana Territory, August 11, 1873. Little Bighorn, Montana Territory, June 25–26, 1876. Canyon Creek, Montana Territory, September 13, 1877. Bear Paw Mountain, Montana Territory, September 30, October 5, 1877. Crow Agency, Montana Territory, November 5, 1887. Wounded Knee, South Dakota, December 29, 1890. Drexel Mission, South Dakota, December 30, 1890. Commanders during American Indian Wars, September 1866, November 1866. Marge. John W. Davidson, November 1866, April 1869. Col. Andrew J. Smith, May 1869, June 1886. Col. Samuel D. Sturgis, July 1886, November 1894. Col. James W. Forsyth, Medal of Honor recipients. A total of 45 men earned the Medal of Honor while serving with the 7th Cavalry during the American Indian Wars. 24 for actions during the Battle of the Little Bighorn, 2 during the Battle of Bear Paw, 17 for being involved in the Wounded Knee Massacre or an engagement at White Clay Creek the next day, and 2 during other actions against the Sioux in December 1890. Before World War II. From 1895 until 1899, the regiment served in New Mexico and Oklahoma, then overseas in Cuba from 1899 to 1902. An enlisted trooper with the 7th Cavalry B Company, from May 1896 until March 1897 at Fort Grant, Arizona Territory, was author Edgar Rice Burroughs. The regiment served in the Philippines during the Philippine-American War from 1904 through 1907, with a second tour from 1911 through 1915. Back in the United States, the regiment was again stationed in the Southwest, in Arizona, where it patrolled the U.S. Mexico border and later was part of the Mexican Punitive Expedition of 1916 to 1917. In December 1917, 7th Cavalry was assigned to the 15th Cavalry Division, an on-paper organization designed for service in France during World War I that was never more than a simple headquarters. This was because no significant role emerged for mounted troops on the Western Front during the 19 months between the entry of the United States into the war and the armistice of the 11th of November 1918. The 7th Cavalry was released from this assignment in May 1918. On the 13th of September 1921, 7th Cavalry Regiment was assigned to the 1st Cavalry Division, which assignment was maintained until 1957. The division and its 2nd Cavalry Brigade was garrisoned at Fort Bliss, Texas, while the 1st Cavalry Brigade was garrisoned at Douglas, Arizona. Additional garrison points were used as well. World War II. The 7th Cavalry Regiment was dismounted on the 28th of February 1943 and started packing up for deployment to the Pacific Theater. Still part of 1st Cavalry Division, the 7th Cavalry staged at Camp Stoneman, California on the 18th of June 1943, and departed the San Francisco port of embarkation on the 26th of June 1943. It arrived in Australia on the 11th of July 1943, where it trained for combat, and then participated in the New Guinea campaign, which began on the 24th of January 1943, and did not end until the 31st of December 1944. The regiment was relieved from duty in this campaign, and moved on to be reorganized under Special Cavalry and Infantry tables of organization and AMP equipment on the 4th of December 1943, and then trained for combat and participated in the Bismarck Archipelago campaign, which started on the 15th of December 1943, and did not end until the 27th of November 1944. The 7th Cavalry moved to Oro Bay, New Guinea on the 22nd of February 1944, and moved by landing craft to Los Negros Island on the 4th of March 1944 to reinforce the units in the Admiralty Islands campaign, securing Lumbrum Plantation. The 7th Cavalry moved on to Hawaii Island, which it secured on 12-13 March 1944. The regiment continued on, and arrived at Lugo's mission on Manus Island on 15 March 1944. The Leyte campaign started on 17 October 1944, and 7th Cavalry moved on towards the Philippines, and assaulted Leyte on 20 October 1944. 7th Cavalry reached the Visayan Sea in late December 1944, and reassembled with the 1st Cavalry Division near Tunga on 7 January 1945. Leyte did not end until 1 July 1945, but 7th Cavalry was needed for the Luzon campaign, which started on 15 December 1944. Deploying again by landing craft, 7th Cavalry landed at Luzon on 27 January 1945, where the regiment engaged until the end of the Luzon campaign on 4 July 1945. 7th Cavalry again reorganized, this time entirely under infantry. Tables of organization and AMP equipment, but still designated as a cavalry regiment on 20 July 1945 to prepare for the invasion of the main Japanese islands. However, the invasion was terminated after the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki forced the Japanese to surrender. 7th Cavalry Regiment was at Lucena, Batangas in the Philippines until 2 September 1945, when it was moved to Japan to start occupation duty. Occupation of Japan and Korean War. The 7th stayed in Japan as part of the occupation force. Coincidentally, one of its officers during this period was Lt. Colonel Bryce C.W. Custer, the grandnephew of former Commander George Armstrong Custer. 7th Cavalry Regiment was reorganized under a new table of organization and equipment on 25 March 1949, when the troops were once again designated as companies. The 7th Cavalry fought in the Korean War's bloodiest battles. These include Hwanggan, Poksong-dong, Kwani, and Naktong River Defense. When the 1st Cavalry Division attacked north, the 7th Cavalry was in front, smashing 106 miles behind enemy lines in an historic 24 hours. 3 more presidential unit citations were added to the colors. In the Nogunri Massacre, 26–29 July 1950, early in the war, the regiment's 2nd Battalion was found to have killed South Korean refugees under and around a railroad bridge at the village of Nogunri, 100 miles southeast of Seoul, because of fear of North Korean infiltrators among civilian groups. In 2005, the South Korean government certified the names of 163 dead or missing and 55 wounded, and said many other victims' names were not reported. Survivors generally estimated some 400 were killed. The massacre first gained worldwide attention through Associated Press articles in 1999 in which 7th Cavalry veterans corroborated Korean survivors' accounts. Major Robert Bateman, a historian, did not believe there was a deliberate massacre. He published his findings and debated his position with author Charles Hanley in an online forum. Cold War and Vietnam. The regiment was relieved from its assignment to the 1st Cavalry Division on 15 October 1957, and reorganized under the Combat Arms Regimental System on 1 November 1957. HQ and AMP HQ Company transferred to the control of the Department of the Army. The 1st of November, as part of this reorganization, Company A was redesignated 1st Battle Group, 7th Cavalry, and assigned to the 1st Cavalry Division. Company B was redesignated 2nd Reconnaissance Squadron, 7th Cavalry, and Company C was redesignated 3rd Reconnaissance Squadron, 7th Cavalry, and assigned to the 10th Infantry Division. After the Korean War, 7th Cavalry was used mainly in a reconnaissance role. It received the M14 rifle, along with various other new weapons and equipment. Also, a few O-13 helicopters were used by the reconnaissance squadrons. 3 battalions, the 1st, 2nd and 5th, served during the Vietnam War as the 3rd Brigade of the 1st Cavalry Division. 3rd Brigade often self-referred itself as the Garryowen Brigade. These troopers were armed with the new M16 rifle, M1911A1 pistols and the M79 grenade launcher. The use of Bellew H-1 Iroquois Huey helicopters transformed the 1st Cavalry into an air mobile unit. 7 men earned the Medal of Honor while serving with the 7th Cavalry in Vietnam. Private 1st Class Louis Albanese, Company B, 5th Battalion, 1st Lieutenant Douglas B. Fournet, Company B, 1st Battalion, Sergeant John Noble Holcomb, Company D, 2nd Battalion, 2nd Lieutenant Walter Joseph Malm, Jr., Company A, 1st Battalion, Private 1st Class William D. Port, Company C, 5th Battalion, Specialist for Hector Santiago Colon, Company B, 5th Battalion, and 1st Lieutenant James M. Sprayberry, Company D, 5th Battalion. The other 2 units, the 3rd and 4th Reconnaissance Squadrons, were based in Germany and Korea. The 1st, 2nd, and 5th Battalions were deactivated after the Vietnam War, and only the 3rd and 4th Squadrons remained as divisional reconnaissance squadrons assigned to the 3rd Infantry Division and 2nd Infantry Division, respectively. Both the 3rd and 4th Squadrons were aviation tank cavalry squadrons using the M551 Sheridan AAV vehicle, M113 and AMP M114 armored personnel carriers. Both squadrons had an air cavalry Delta troop that had both reconnaissance and AMP gunship UH-1Bs. The gunships were armed with M5 rocket launchers and M22 anti-tank guided missiles. In 1963, the 3rd Squadron became the Divisional Cavalry Squadron for the 3rd Infantry Division and was stationed at Ledwood and AMP Con Barracks, Schweinfurt, West Germany. The squadron consisted of 3 ground troops and a headquarters troop. The ground troops were equipped with M60A3 tanks, M113 armored personnel carriers, ITV, and a mortar section with 4.2-INCH mortars mounted in an M113 variant. In 1984, the M60 tanks were replaced with M3 Bradley cavalry fighting vehicle. The reorganization created 2 M3-equipped ground troops, 1 long-range surveillance ground troop and 2 aviation troops equipped with O-58 Scout helicopters and R-1 Cobra attack helicopters. On the 16th of November 1992, the squadron was inactivated in Germany and relieved of assignment to the 8th Infantry Division. The headquarters and headquarters troop consolidated on the 16th of December 1992 with the 3rd Reconnaissance Company and designated as headquarters and headquarters troop. 3rd Squadron, 7th Cavalry. On the 16th of February 1996, the squadron was assigned to the 3rd Infantry Division and activated at Fort Stewart, Georgia as the Division Cavalry Squadron. The squadron has been involved in several deployments since then, including Operation Desert Storm in Kuwait, Operation Joint Forge in Bosnia, and Operation Iraqi Freedom. The squadron was reassigned to the the 2nd Brigade Combat Team of the 3rd Infantry Division in 2004 as the Brigade's Armored Reconnaissance Squadron. Combat operations for Operation Iraqi Freedom 3 began on the 4th of February 2005 when the squadron arrived at Forward Operating Base Rustamiyah located in southeast Baghdad. Immediately on arrival, the squadron began patrolling the area east of the Tigris River in the Ras Afar and New Baghdad districts, as well as securing Route Pluto North, one of the primary supply routes for the division. Between 1974 and 1975, other units were reactivated. The 1st Battalion became an armored unit. The 2nd Battalion remained an air-mobile unit with a recon platoon using motorcycles moved by helicopters. After 1975, the 2nd and 5th Battalion were reorganized as mechanized infantry. In 1978, the 5th Battalion was once again deactivated. Operation Desert Storm. The 1st and 4th Squadrons fought in Operation Desert Storm in January-February 1991. Ground troops were armed with the M3A1 Bradley CFV, air cavalry troops AH-1F Cobras, OH-58C Scouts. The 1st Squadron, under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Walter L. Sharp, was the divisional cavalry squadron for the 1st Cavalry Division and assigned to the division's aviation brigade. The squadron was organized as a headquarters troop, 2 ground troops, and 2 air troops. Prior to deployment, the squadron also attached a ground troop, Troop Air 2D Squadron, 1st Cavalry, from the inactivating 2D Armored Division, also at Fort Hood. After attachment, the additional troop was provisionally flagged as Troop E, 1st Squadron, 7th Cavalry. The squadron was in Southwest Asia from October 1990 until May 1991. During the campaign, 7 Cav overwatched the border area of Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait, did numerous recon missions into Iraq and led the 1st Cavalry Division during its attack into Iraq after being released as the CENTCOM, Theater Reserve. After the war, TRPE 17 Cav remained in the squadron's task organization through its reorganization in 1993. Exchanging its guidance with TRPC 17 Cav in 1994. The 4th Squadron, under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Terry L. Tucker, was the divisional cavalry squadron for 3rd Armored Division, taking part of the Battle of Phase Line Bullet. The squadron was inactivated in 1992 with the rest of the 3D Armored Division. In 1996, the squadron was reactivated as a subordinate element of Aviation Brigade, 2D Infantry Division at Camp Pelham, Korea, using the equipment and personnel of the inactivating 5th Squadron, 17th Cavalry. In 2004, the squadron was reassigned as a subordinate element of the 1st Heavy Brigade Combat Team, 2D Infantry Division, Camp Hovey, Korea. Operation Iraqi Freedom. The 3rd Squadron, 7th Cavalry, was the spearhead and the screening force for the main elements of the U.S. 3rd Infantry Division during the Iraq War. The 3D Squadron launched an attack under the command of LTC Terry Farrell on the 20th of March 2003. The 3rd Squadron was the eyes and ears for the U.S. 3rd Infantry Division and the Iron Fist for the U.S. 18th Airborne Corps. The squadron was engaged with the enemy earlier and more often in the war than any other unit. Combat operations for Operation Iraqi Freedom began on the 20th of March 2003, when the squadron crossed into Iraq as the lead element of the 3rd Infantry Division. The squadron attacked towards Baghdad, fighting both the Republican Guard and the Saddam Fatah. With the capture of Baghdad, the division and the squadron transition to stabilization operations. By the time the squadron had redeployed, it had killed 2,200 Iraqi personnel, 64 tanks, 41 armored vehicles, numerous active air defense systems, as well as trucks and civilian vehicles used as suicide bombers. The 1st Squadron, 7th Cavalry, served in the 1st Cavalry Division's 5th Brigade Combat Team during its first deployment in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom 2 from the 1st of April 2004 to the 1st of April 2005. The 1st Squadron, 7th Cavalry, commanded by LTC William R. Salter, executed combat operations in the Al-Rashid district of Baghdad, Iraq. The squadron defeated a surge of enemy attacks and neutralized insurgent and terrorist elements within its area of operations through a combination of constant day-to-day interaction with the populace and adaptable tactics. In addition to securing an area of 68 square kilometers with a population of more than 1.2 million, the squadron also secured Route Irish, a strategic highway and multinational core Iraq main supply route connecting the international zone to the Baghdad International Airport. The squadron also helped provide secure environment during the first Iraqi democratic election in January 2005. 1st Squadron, 7th Cavalry Regiment was awarded the Meritorious Unit Citation for its actions during this campaign. Most recently, 1-7 Cav, commanded by LTC Kevin S. McWatters, deployed as the Armed Reconnaissance Squadron for 1st Brigade, 1st Cavalry Division in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom 06-08. The squadron conducted full-spectrum operations as a part of Multinational Division Baghdad in the Taji area of operations. During this deployment, the squadron destroyed multiple improvised explosive device and vehicle-borne improvised explosive devices terrorist cells. As a part of the surge, enhancing MNDB's ability to secure Baghdad, the secure environment created by the squadron in the Taji area enabled local government to take hold, local police and Iraqi army forces to take over security operations, and the reconciliation to successfully spread throughout the area of operations. The 2nd Battalion, 7th Cavalry, was attached to the 39th BCT, although assigned to 3D BCT, 1st Cav. The unit deployed to Iraq under the command of LTC Charles Forshey 7 months after arrival in Iraq and was succeeded by LTC James Eugene Rainey. In August 2004, the 2nd Battalion supported U.S. Marine Corps operations during the Battle of Najaf and the Battle of Fallujah. The 2nd Battalion moved from 3rd BCT, 1st Cavalry Division, FD Hood, Texas, to FD Bliss to become part of the newly formed 4th BCT, and in October 2006 the 2nd Battalion again headed for Iraq, this time to Mosul. 2-7 Cav, consisting of only 4 infantry companies, were tasked with eliminating AQI and patrolling Iraq's third largest city, dividing the sprawling urban area into quarters. Within the first several months, the battalion took the first casualties of the 4th BCT. Since October 2006, SECO 2-7 Cav has endured 6 KIA and numerous wounded. 2nd Battalion redeployed in December 2007 to Fort Bliss, TX. In 2008, it deployed from Fort Hood, TX to Iraq in support of OIF 0809. Maintaining control of the northern half of the Mason province of Iraq. It operated out of FOB Garryowen. FOB Garryowen, located in Amara, Iraq's border city with Iran, was established in June 2008 for the battalion by a team of 23 Air Force enlisted engineers. 0809B2 7 Cav was relieved by the OIF 0608B2 7 Cav, who along with the Iraqi police in Majah al-Kabir captured the criminals responsible for murdering 6 British military police in November 2004. Among its other accomplishments, 7 Cav worked with the Iraqi security forces to provide successful security to Iraq's provincial elections in January 2009 and is responsible for several large-volume cash finds. During its tour, the 10th Iraqi Army Division conducted Operation Lion's Roar, a combined live-fire exercise in Maysan Province in April 2009. As part of the Army's modularity program, the 3rd Infantry Division converted the 1-3 Air Defense Artillery Battalion to become 5th Squadron, 7th Cavalry Regiment, an armored reconnaissance squadron. The 5th Squadron deployed in 2005 and most recently in January 2007. Under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Cliff Wheeler, the squadron initially operated north of Ramadi, and remained under the operational control of the 1st Brigade Combat Team. In April 2007, the squadron conducted a full-scale movement to contact clearing from Ramadi to the south of Lake Habariya, and then east to Rutain and Fallujah, while attaching to the Marine Corps 6th Regimental Combat Team and basing at Camp Baharia, due to the firepower and mobility inherent within a cavalry squadron. 7 Cav was assigned the largest battle space within RCT-6's area of operations. The squadron also suffered from the limitations in assigned troopers that also comes with the cavalry. For 8 months, the squadron conducted security and coin operations across the Warpaintau. The squadron established and maintained freedom of movement along routes Michigan, Iron, San Juan and Gold, and maintained a secure environment in the towns of Sakiawea, North Sakiawea, Amaria and Faris. Additional operations at both the troop and squadron level cleared and held new terrain within the regimental security zone. In December 2007, the squadron was attached to the operational control of the 3rd Infantry Division's 2nd Brigade Combat Team at FOB Kalsu. The squadron conducted relief in place with 2 USMC rifle battalions and redeployed to Kalsu in approximately 8 days. An additional week of training and preparations were required before they attacked into Arab Jabba and cleared the town of Safiya in conjunction with the Iraqi Sons of Iraq program. The squadron occupied an area that had seen no long-term coalition forces presence and conducted operations in an austere environment. The squadron secured all routes with fixed positions while simultaneously building Copmead, clearing all routes, terrain and structures within the new Warpaintau. The squadron completed the mission in March 2008 and conducted a relief in place with 1187 in the Rakazans, before redeploying to Fort Stewart in April 2008. During OIFV, the squadron suffered 6 Kia and numerous wounded. During 20 months of subsequent dwell time, the squadron participated as part of the 1st Heavy Brigade Combat Team in the Chemical, Biological, Radiological, Nuclear, Explosive Consequence Management Reaction Force mission in support of the requirements of defense support to civil authority. This mission requires the unit, at the request of local, state and national civil authorities, to deploy within the United States in response to a catastrophic event. The squadron is currently in final preparations for a 3rd deployment to Iraq in December 2009. Operation Enduring Freedom. In November 2012, 2nd Battalion, 7th Cavalry was deployed to Kapasar and Kabul provinces in RC East, operating from Fobs Tagab and Naglu High, positions formerly held by the French Army. In January 2013, 5th Squadron, 7th Cavalry was deployed to Kalat District, Zabul Province, Afghanistan, operating from Fob Apache.